Hello, all, and welcome to the newest episode of the Noobs and Knockouts Podcast. I am Austin. I'm a knockout. I've watched a lot of wrestling.
I'm David. I'm a noob, and I haven't watched a whole lot of wrestling. And even though you would think that would get me running off with all the weird shit we watch on this show, once again, I have returned.
Indeed. So after wild and crazy times with Elizabeth, we are back to a more regular episode. We return to our Summer of Punk storyline.
I know. The void feels so much more lonely now.
Yeah, it kind of does. But yeah, this is set the July 25th, 2011 episode of Raw, a mere 8 days after Money in the Bank.
Oh shit, it's my brother's birthday.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
So what happened the night after Money in the Bank? And it's funny because I remember we talk about a lot about like how sometimes in WWE the wrestling doesn't really isn't important at all to the story.
Yeah.
On last time's episode of Raw, the whole story is most of the story is the wrestling because
and it was glorious.
No, and yeah, so besides being bookended by a McMahon story segment, which I'll explain that after I explain the wrestling stuff, the whole episode is essentially a one-night tournament to crown the new WWE Champion. Because, well, Punk's gone. We need a champion. So let's have a tournament to crown a champion.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And so the tournament bracket is basically all the wrestlers from the Money in the Bank match except Evan Bourne, LOL. And instead of Evan Bourne, Dolph Ziggler is in there. In that
spot. That's not an upgrade.
No, but it does. Well, it says a lot about Evan Bourne, doesn't it?
It really
He's the only one here who doesn't get to be in the tournament for the WWE Championship.
Honestly, the fact that Alex Riley made the cut over him to also says a lot about Evan Bourne.
Yeah, admittedly, that might have just been so they could have an excuse to have him fight The Miz for the 50th time. Because that is what they do. So I wrote down the results so that I could remember them. Okay. And it is Miz beat Alex Riley in the first round. And it's kind of funny because The Miz is undeniably a heel, but his story throughout the show is that he has an injured leg. He still has an injured leg from the Money in the Bank match the night before, which is such a sympathetic good guy story beat that it feels weird that The Miz is the one who's they're doing this with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see them playing it for heel heat, or maybe it was just kind of like they wanted to keep some continuity, but
yeah, I think it was a keep the continuity thing because that was the whole story with him in the Money in the Bank match is that he was injured. So they're kind of keeping to that, but it's so funny because and it's also funny that attacking somebody who has a noted injury is kind of treated as a heel move, even though if you applied that to real fighting, that's a neutral move in morality. But in wrestling, attacking someone's injured leg or whatever was kind of considered a bit of a dick move, an unsportsmanlike move, if you will. And that's what Alex Riley in particular does. He goes hard at that. But The Miz is able to kind of craftily pick his spots and get the win.
Are either of them squaring up for a turn by doing this?
No.
Or is it just an anomaly of the writing?
This is just kind of a novelty of this one segment. They're not. I know the future. The Miz is not turning face anytime soon.
Yeah, I was gonna say Miz stays properly heel pretty much throughout his entire career, right?
Yeah, he has a couple year period from 2012 to I want to say 2014, 2015, something like that, where he's a babyface. But other than that, he has been a heel his entire career. So
neat.
Yeah. And then the next match, R-Truth beat Jack Swagger. That was a okay match. It was a whole lot of whatever from I think both sides. Kofi Kingston beat Alberto Del Rio. I thought this was a bit of a shock because Del Rio is Mr. Money in the Bank, and he even cuts a promo about how to remind everyone he won the Money in the Bank, and Kofi pulls an upset on him.
Well, yeah, but I also feel like after the end of the last episode we watched, where he just where Vince calls him out to try to get rid of Punk, and Punk just immediately clowns on him. I feel like they're just setting El Del Rio up to be this pompous like dope whose bark is far worse than his bite.
Yeah, I think that fits. I think that fits him a lot.
Yeah,
You mention it, but
yeah.
and then the last first round match is Rey Mysterio beat Dolph Ziggler.
Oh, thank God. Okay, my two faves who got like completely shunted in Money in the Bank got their revenge. Thank God.
Yeah, so second round matches, The Miz beat Kofi Kingston. It was a Kofi Kingston
Oh.
doesn't play up the injured angle the same way that Riley did, but
Mm.
Miz was still playing it injured and he did get the win. And then Rey Mysterio beat R-Truth, and
Yes.
so the match for the WWE Championship, The Miz versus Rey Mysterio,
Oh, hell yeah.
it doesn't happen yet, which is a good
Oh,
enough segue for me to explain the McMahon segments that bookend the show. So
okay.
Vince McMahon starts the show and sets up this little one night tournament thing that is the rest of the plot for the episode. And
Mhm.
he's talking about how they need a new champion, and you're never gonna hear that name, CM. Like the crowd was chanting CM Punk the whole time, and he goes, "You're never gonna hear that name on TV again." And in fact, the commentators were even instructed not to say CM Punk by name. They have to say the former WWE champion. Like they're
Oh,
going all in on this idea that he's fired, he's gone, he's not coming back. No, we don't talk about him. He's being
I
scrubbed from the history books.
you know what? I appreciate that. I mean, again, it's not a surprise to me that Summer of Punk's writing is actually like competent and has nice little touches like that. But it's always appreciated.
Oh yeah, it was great. And so he also points out that conspicuous by his absence from this one night tournament is John Cena. He's like, I know that Cena is not here. Well, guess what? He mentions there will be severe consequences for his actions.
Isn't Cena just supposed to be like straight up fired for this? Wasn't that the deal?
Yeah, that's what the implied consequences are. The whole show is like
Oh.
they like bring in that like earlier in the day, John Cena tweeted out this is during that early period of Twitter, and WWE would love to like reference tweets on the show that like they would plan this kind of integration out. But so like they talk about that Cena tweets out, that he's assuming that he's fired, and he's like apologizing to the fans and to The Rock because he's not going to be able to have his match with The Rock at WrestleMania. And so like they sell this the entire show of like John Cena, is he fired? He seems like he's fired.
Hmm.
And so at the end of the show, Vince McMahon comes back out and he announces that the Miz is too injured to wrestle a third time tonight, so Rey Mysterio versus the Miz will happen next week, and that opens this show. We're gonna watch is Rey
Oh, that's gonna
Mysterio
be
versus
good.
the Miz for the
Yes.
WWE title, and
Oh.
so with that business taken care of, Vince McMahon now proceeds to what he intended to do. He's going to bring John Cena out here, and yeah, he tries to fire him. He almost says it. They do a bit of a long take. John Cena kind of gets a kind of an impassioned speech where he's like, I know that you probably want me to run you down or run the company down or get mad or cuss you out or whatever, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go out with dignity. And he also makes a promise that if you fire me, he's like, wrestling is my life. And if you fire me, I'm going to go wrestle somewhere else. And he explicitly calls out TNA, and he goes by saying, I'm going to go wrestle somewhere else, brother, because Hulk Hogan is a prominent figure in TNA at this point.
Oh, really?
That's a whole thing that I don't want to get into beyond just saying
that sounds like a lot.
that's a thing. Yeah. So like he was making hints that like I'll go to TNA if you don't let me wrestle, if you fire me right now. But Vince McMahon, he's just straightforward and he's about to do it. And then suddenly, I've kind of come to hate this phrase because, CinemaSins overuses it, but this kind of fits, is we have a Triple H ex machina, folks. because
Okay.
Triple H's music comes out, and to understand is that right now he is the kayfabe chief financial officer of WWE.
Yep.
And so he comes out of nowhere. Again, this I use Ex Machina intentionally here because there is, besides like theoretically he exists, but he has not been present in this storyline even a little bit up to now. And so he just shows up with no prompting, and he gives this long speech about how he wants to talk to Vince, and he's like, there was a board of directors meeting, and they're not so sure about everything that's going on right now, and they want you to step down. And so this was the kayfabe firing of Vince McMahon from the head of the company.
What
with Triple H put in his place.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And also especially funny after CM Punk's comments about your dumbass son-in-law or whatever.
Yeah, like he makes the comments that, like, he was referencing the idea of like, because that's a popular fan sentiment is, just wait until Vince McMahon's out of there, and CM Punk was like, nah, some people say that, but nah, he's this company's gonna just be run by his doofus son-in-law.
Yeah,
Meet the doofus son-in-law.
Whoops.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting. I think I've heard before, but that might just be a rumor, that like this was an attempt by Vince McMahon to write himself off the show for good. That's a thing that's happened semi-frequently. Like it happens every once in a while of like Vince McMahon tries to like write an end to his character.
Wow, okay.
And it never takes. The closest they ever got was the time he blew himself up in a limo, and they had I hate, but like this was a whole thing in 2008. Like he blows himself up in a limo, and they were going to do this whole murder mystery thing with it. But then the Chris Benoit tragedy happens, and then they're like, oh well, okay, we're just gonna retcon this. We're not gonna do a murder mystery plot when an actual wrestler of ours just died.
Every time they try to they try to like really go outside the box with kind of ghost shit like that, it seriously just always blows up in their faces in the worst possible way.
Yeah, no, the timing couldn't have been worse. But like it's something that Vince tries a couple of times. Has tried a couple times before, and this I've heard was another one of those. Is like this was supposed to be like legit. Vince McMahon isn't in charge of WWE anymore in kayfabe.
Yeah, he's tired. He's tired of just these random like spots, and that's why he doesn't show up on the show anymore.
Yeah, and to be fair, this kind of was like the last time Vince McMahon was kind of for this storyline, as you've seen, has kind of been like a regular kind of figure on the show, and this was the last time that would happen. But he does keep showing up as like the explicit chief executive officer of the company, and I think that a lot of that comes down to he's still a ratings get for the fans. Like the fans still like it always pops a rating when he shows up.
Yeah.
So, they keep bringing him back so that they try to like boost ratings a little bit. So they can never retire Vince McMahon.
Seriously. I mean, the fans like their legacy, continuity, tradition, whatever. It about scans. And I mean, McMahon, for as terrible as he is, like IRL is a fun enough character that like, yeah, it's fun to have him there and kind of have his weird company running political shenanigans be story focused sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. So, but yeah, he gets fired, and that's where the show ends. Is him like tearfully in the ring crying because he's now like he has lost his job. The board of directors has kicked him out.
Shit. Okay, poor Vince. So I mean, kind of deserves it, but Jesus.
Yeah. So this episode is the first of the Triple H era, so to speak.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
And literally nothing else happens on this episode except for they do a big multi divas tag team match. As I mentioned to David when I was watching this, it was a 7-on-7 match, and like one team was like all of the women who were kind of decent in the Divas era, and Kelly was there too.
Which is so devastating to say, because wasn't Kelly like their big Divas ticket for a while?
Yes, Kelly was the champion.
Oh no.
And so, it doesn't really go anywhere as far as I can tell. But, it's there to break up the monotony of watching the same 8 guys just go out there and wrestle one-on-one matches the entire show.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm sure it was about on par with typical Divas quality of the era, but at least it breaks it up a little bit.
It went like a minute. And
How does a 7-on-7 go for a minute?
Because it immediately devolves into everybody but the 2 legal participants brawling on the outside of the ring.
The Divas era is beyond parody.
It's rough.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was also going to get at is like, this episode is that it kind of the big problem with doing one night tournaments is that the crowds don't appreciate the monotony of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of interesting drama in tournaments, and I like them. But like if you're there live, for 2 hours, you got to see 8 total wrestlers just wrestling each other.
I mean, that doesn't sound too bad. Like, with some of the matchups we got, that sounds cool. I don't think I would mind that.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to experience it, but you see this every single time. Every time there's this noticeable the crowd energy lowers every time they see a guy again. They're the maximum energy for that first time, and then it's a little lower for the second time, and then it's a little lower for the third time. And so without being there, I can't judge. I can't say how I would react, but this is kind of an observable effect.
Sure, I guess so. Crowd psychology is an interesting whole thing, so I get it. But I don't know. I feel like yeah, you got to experience it live, I suppose.
Yeah, and other than that, I mean, that covers the whole episode. That whole episode of everything we need to know going in for this one is what we're going to start this episode with a new WWE champion.
All right, new boss and new champion. Let's go.
All right, and so see you guys in the back. We have just finished the July 25th, 2011 episode of Monday Night Raw.
Whew, damn. I had a thing I was gonna say, when that I was just thinking, pretty much throughout the whole episode, that kind of got invalidated by the last 2 seconds of the episode. But I'm gonna say it anyway. Was going into this episode, I was a little trepidatious because, it felt like we hit the pinnacle of Summer of Punk with the last time we were here, with that giant walkout and everything. It felt like that was the peak. Nothing would surpass that. And now we have Summer of Punk without Punk, and I wasn't entirely sure how well they would be able to pull it off. And honestly, this ranks as just one of the consistently best episodes we've watched. It didn't have any insane highlights, some of the I wouldn't rank any of its matches as among the super best matches we watched or anything, but just the consistent quality of this episode was exceptional.
Yeah, I was also kind of prepared to talk about how we're hitting on the downward slope of Summer of Punk. As a bit of a spoiler for future reference, our next time we're here is going to be the last time we do this era. And so I was kind of ready for the down slope from Money in the Bank. And I still think that's there in the sense that the Money in the Bank thing is like an all-time great. Moment and match, but this was still pretty quality episode.
Yeah, I don't think few things I think in wrestling media history I think will ever match up to that climax of Summer of Punk. That is simply unparalleled. And I know like my general thoughts on this, broad like early 2010s era of wrestling of it's got some pretty good stuff. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's a little bloated, but like overall it's all right. But like everything, even in this episode, felt really, really well crafted, and I felt bought into pretty much everything that went on here. There were only like 2 matches that I like didn't care about, and even then, like they were still decent athletic shows.
Yeah, I would say that the Divas match is the only one that I was like really not into in any way.
I honestly, I'll even give it to the Divas match in that is one of the better Divas matches we've watched.
That's also true.
Good, but it is one of the better ones. And honestly, after some of the ones we've watched, it was it felt like night and day, a breath of fresh air of like, oh my god, this is actually somewhat tolerable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is absolutely one of the better ones we sat through. I think that this through the Summer of Punk angle, I think we've gotten a good examination of what Divas Era wrestling looked like. As a general sense, and this was definitely above average in that regard.
It was, and like so. I like even stuff like that, or the other one that like I didn't really care about, which was Evan Bourne versus Dolph
Ziggler. Yes, that was a very fillery match. There was no real build up to it or any point overall.
Yeah, that one I didn't care a whole lot about, but like I'll give them both this, that like they still give decent athletic shows, even if I'm not like super caring about it. Like I can respect kind of like what they do a little bit. And it's always fun to have Vicky there. And at the very least, like this feels such a backhanded compliment, but I appreciate this too. Like they cordoned it off to its own little section of like not mattering. Like it just was kind of there, and they never really like make a whole thing out of it. And it doesn't feel like they waste too much time on the match. It felt like, painlessly short.
It was only a few minutes. It was pretty quick.
Yeah, I don't felt like my time was super wasted on that match. They had to throw it in because filler. Sure, why not? Like I don't.
I've seen worse filler. So.
Absolutely, we've seen worse filler on this show. I have been far more actively bored by matches than what I saw with Dolph Ziggler versus Evan Bourne. Like, fine. And like I'll even give it to them, like they were both players in the Money in the Bank thing, so bringing them back to keep fighting, brawling with each other a little bit, sure.
Yeah, and the Money in the Bank thing is kind of like the Raw's upper mid card. So they're still relatively important.
Yeah, exactly. So like it was enough there that I could still like it didn't feel like a waste of time, and it was diverting enough. So I'll give that episode this. Even like its lowest points, like they weren't painful. They were just kind of there, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then they were done, and we didn't waste too much more time on it.
Yeah, I would probably wager that we've watched, this is our third and final episode of Raw from 2011 that we're going to do. And I feel like this is the most consistent episode we've had, because I think a big problem with the last two, with the pipe bomb and then with the contract negotiation stuff, I think that those kind of like are like we're almost shining beacons in episodes that otherwise weren't that good.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, the whole like how good the Punk stuff was almost bit them in the ass in a way, because it made everything around, with some exceptions. There were some other things in those episodes that I like.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I will always like hold up the Mark Henry versus Big Show fight as a really good really good place to take things on the side. But like those were such standout things. They were so earth-shattering that everything else for the most part around it felt really dull by comparison, and kind of bit him in the ass. You were just kind of waiting for the really fun part to come back.
Yeah.
And again, on a broad level, there were individual things to enjoy, but here, without that being as much of a thing, honestly, this is another one of those episodes where I really felt like the overall like story feel to it, like the narrative felt really balanced, really competently constructed, and never it never dipped into territory that was either like too much or too boring or too anything. It was just
Mhm.
good all around because everything was kind of on even footing with each other.
Yeah, I think that if you look at what kind of is always like the WWE like points of interest in when they structure their shows, the beginning, the middle, the halfway, the hour mark, and the end. I think that there's a really solid like a plot through line of that whole thing.
Yeah.
In this episode.
The cool thing about it was they found a way to just weave in all these little things. Like I mean, Money in the Bank helped a lot with this, right? Because the big thing we have is the fallout from Punk leaving. McMahon's gone. Triple H has stepped in. John Cena is like technically fired. And we don't get a whole lot of we don't get a whole lot of we don't get a whole lot of whole lot of like bloating around that. It just kind of like is there. It just kind of all lays out across the board, and we see how it's all built up, and we have Money in the Bank. Like all the competitors of Money in the Bank are here, and you're invested enough in them because each of them were kind of vying for their own spot here.
Like there's a power vacuum right now.
Yeah, and this episode does a really good job at like making you feel that.
Yeah, and we kind of can start with then is the very first match of they get started off immediately with Rey Mysterio versus The Miz for the WWE Championship,
which was a phenomenal match.
Oh yeah, great match. It played very well. Like The Miz is no longer with doesn't have the injury angle anymore now that he's had a week to heal, and so he's all in on being his normal like shithead, take any shortcut he can heel work with against the smaller, more agile, underdog babyface Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, and it's really cool because like The Miz in some ways feels like the ordained son to take that title, just kind of because of how he is as a character. Like
he's right now like this is the peak Miz in terms of him being viewed as a like viable top champion right now. He's like he main evented WrestleMania in 2011.
Yeah, he certainly comes across in this like really threatening way in this match. He's got this drive. And what's more, what kind of added to it, like this was another time where like I actually really did notice the commentary because we had Jerry Lawler and Michael Cole just sniping back and forth at each other for their respective fighters. Like it kept everything really tense.
Like because like Michael Cole, even as a heel, obviously he kind of plays favorites to all the heels, but his absolute number one wrestler in his heel phase was always The Miz.
Yeah,
like he always stand The Miz harder than he ever rooted for or justified for any other heel wrestler. So he's all in on this, and that just kind of brings Lawler up to that level of going the opposite.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool too because like as I've made very clear on the show, I do not like Jerry Lawler. When he's in his heel face, he's just so like groan-inducingly awful, and like in his baby face commentator face, he just kind of still gives off douchey vibes and is telling dumb dad jokes and what have you, and still gets kind of weird about things sometimes. But seeing him go in for a wrestler I really like Rey Mysterio, I was like, okay, I will accept this ally in my time of need.
Yeah.
Because it's fun for me because I don't know like the full everything context of the time of like where Mysterio stood as a character, but for me, for some reason, I've just always really latched on to Mysterio. He's insanely talented, and he comes across insanely like genuine and likable. So I'm just like really in the tank for him. So I'm really invested in seeing a good outcome in this. And the more this match drags on, the more I'm just like, I don't know which way this could go. And everything just felt like for for as much as Mysterio, I'm sure, wasn't like a gigantic name like Cena was or anything, like they seeing him rise to the top felt really, really rewarding for a number of reasons.
Yeah. Rey Mysterio has always kind of been like, what I guess I'd say he's always been like one of the more popular good guy wrestlers. Yes, because he has this energy about him that's very likable, and obviously you got the whole mask thing. But he's also never been a wrestler that they put a ton of stock into in terms of like being a top champion. Like, he's always been really likable. Everybody likes him, but he's very rarely in his career. The fact that he's so small has always been something that has held him back from greater success in terms of that kind of accolades in WWE. So it absolutely does. I think it does work as kind of like you really want Rey to beat The Miz, but you also could definitely believe that The Miz would win this match.
Yeah, I mean,
The Miz is also going into this match, The Miz had been WWE champion before, and Rey hadn't.
And God, Rey almost feels like a modern Bret Hart sort of thing of like they have this really well liked guy, but for some reason he's just they refuse to like really give him top billing.
And I definitely think that's dumb. Like we could talk more about his most prominent time as world champion was in 2005. He won the not the WWE title, the other one.
Oh, buddy.
He won that, and he was champion for a few months, and it kind of did this. It basically was a flop, and a large part of that is they constantly had Rey losing, because they constantly played into the idea that he's so small, so he can't beat the big guys.
I guess for like 05, that makes sense for like their dumb outlook on that.
Like, it was so like it. That's been the one thing he's never gotten to be top. That's been his big contributor to why he didn't get his the top billing that you would necessarily think he should, because he is literally one of the more popular and marketable guys they have.
And easily one of their most athletically gifted fighters, if not their most.
No, and he is, and he can kind of do pretty much anything you want. They would have wanted him to do. It was literally just a size problem.
Yeah, I know. And this is where I get really mad about Vince's whole like I need like fitness models as my fighters sort of thing. Like but like regardless, because of all that, like it kind of contributes to this weird like dissonance where in the back of your mind, because of like how WWE kind of shafts him, you're kind of thinking like, it feels kind of random to let him win, even though like by all accounts he should. But then the fact that he does win feels really, really cool, and I was genuinely insanely happy to see that happen.
Yes, he finally became a WWE champion.
And it was so rewarding, and just everything about that felt so good. It's like amazing start to the episode of just all the tension and the brilliant payoff to it. That just it felt like him getting his due, and that just personally felt really, really good.
Yeah, and they tricked you into thinking he was going to lose it right then and there, because The Miz decides to be a sore loser, and then Del Rio comes a running.
Yup.
But he is thwarted again.
I know. The things they keep throwing at you in this episode, you'd think it'd be like too much, but it kind of all worked for me.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's too much.
Yeah, no. It's very they space it out enough, and they're they don't like that. I think a big thing for this episode, it doesn't feel like they overplayed anything. They gave everything just the right amount, because like the Miz comes and attacks him, and you're like, well, shit, but that's like whatever. Then Del Rio comes running, and you're like, well, shit. But then Mysterio quickly yeets Del Rio back, and so that's fine. And it's great to see Del Rio continuing to be a total fop. It's fun. And then
they give him the backstage thing, the acknowledgement from Cena, but then he also gets to cut the interview. And I'm just thinking this now. He did the 2 weeks from retirement, got family at home shtick, where like he talks about how he's put in all the work, and that Daddy's coming home, and this time he's coming home with the gold.
Yep.
Oh dear. why would you say that?
That I mean, yeah, I did notice that was like a direct parallel to like the Mark Henry thing. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I get why, but like, at the moment, it just felt so good, and I was like,
in the moment, it obviously feels very genuine. But look back, it is one of the.
Yeah.
I am gonna call it the. I got 2 weeks to retirement
yeah,
line
yeah,
of like you've tempted fate now.
this is true, but like, I got suckered in, and I thought, goddamn, once again, I thought like, man, WWE is gonna go for something that's just like flatly wholesome here. It felt
And
really good.
then Triple H ruined it.
Yeah, Triple H ruined it. We get that. Yeah.
Oh, do you want to go in order?
I mean, like, is that up
Blue
next?
line?
Like,
that was the top of the hour. So.
Oh yeah, we can through line it if you want. I was like, it's however we want to go. But yeah, no. So long story short, Mysterio gets this great backstage moment, and like Austin said, there's this really cool thing where he's passing by all these wrestlers and they're like spraying beer on him and he's like happy and he gives one of the lady wrestlers a classy like cheek kiss and all that that sort of thing. And then he walks down the line and there's John Cena walking up to him and John Cena just kind of like wordlessly like reaches out his hand and shakes it. Mysterio's like he looks like honored. He's like, damn, I've been entrusted with this. And it's awesome. And they do a great thing. And then, a couple matches happen. And then we get Triple H out to give the State of the WWE address as the new boss.
This was the start of hour 2 of the show.
Yeah. And I gotta say, like, overall, Triple H's boss, I was kind of into it. I was surprised that I was into it.
Yeah, I kind of agree because, again, I hate to like bring future knowledge to ruin my current experience of things on these shows.
Yeah.
But like years down the line, Triple H is going to assume a role of like a heel evil boss. And that is just going to run in the ground so hard that it's hard for me to like want to see him in this boss role. But as this kind of like affably neutral boss, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got out of it too. Was the reason I enjoyed it so much was, again, God, the writing in this era to me just feels so smart and well constructed across the board. They do this great subtle thing. Between his acting and the writing they gave him, they do this great job at kind of juxtaposing him to Vince. Of off the bat, he's like level-headed and he's in control, and he doesn't feel like he's playing favorites. Like he plays a little bit of favorites, but they give him this great vibe of everything he's doing is he's here to do what's in the best interest for the company, and he's just going to do it in, the way that works best for him. There's no personal vendetta. There's no like, even when he says something that sounds personal, because he does a few things. First, he brings out, he thanks Vince for his years of service and, yada, yada, yada. And that's all cute. And, yeah. And then does he do something before he brings out JR?
I think he just he announces the main event.
He announces the main event,
which is that whole thing, and we'll talk about it when we talk about it. But it's Rey Mysterio. He talks about how Cena is owed a rematch for the WWE Championship, as is general WWE trope that the champion always gets a rematch when he loses the title.
Yeah.
But Vince McMahon had no interest in letting Cena have that opportunity while he was in charge, and Triple H is looking to right that wrong. And so in the main event will be Rey Mysterio versus John Cena for the WWE Championship.
Yeah, and like that came across as like personal, but like then like I don't know, at least for me, like I stopped and think about it for a second, and I'm like, well, not really. This is good business sense from him. Like he's like you said, he's righting the wrong first of all, but he knows that's gonna get ratings.
It is smart to steal from a catchphrase he'll use plenty. It was what was best for business.
Yeah. And then he brings out Jim Ross.
Yes, he's
the
bringing
guest
back.
commentator.
Bringing back Jim Ross as a commentator. I don't remember if this is supposed to be like a semi-permanent thing or as a guest thing. But we have experience with Jim Ross both in our one time in AEW as well as our time in the Attitude Era. So,
Yep. And he's fine. But
the real fun is with Cole.
Yeah, the real fun is Michael Cole is pissed about this. And I don't fully understand why, but he is. He's real mad, and I don't
really get why either. Maybe he just feels like he's being replaced or whatever.
I think it's that he's being upstaged, and I think like at this point they're playing Cole as like at least for this episode, they're playing Cole as like such an obnoxious heel that like any more like faceness on the panel is just like noxious to him.
It's too much.
Yeah. So he's just mad about it. And he gets up and gives this whole angry rant to Triple H about like how much he's done for the company, and this is what I get having to sit at the same table with this man I despise. And he insults Jim Ross, who just kind of stands there like, okay, buddy.
He's like, whatever, man, I don't care.
Yeah, throws a whole bunch of like nonsensical ad homs at him, and is like, going to town on Triple H, and both of them are just kind of standing there watching this unhinged dude like lose his shit. And again, another great subtle point of the writing is like, if this were a McMahon would probably take the bait a little bit. But
he would.
But it's this great juxtaposition of like after we have this whole mess that was born out of the chaos of all these like uneven tempers in our company. We have, we have one dude going off, and Triple H just stands there and is like, okay, here's what we can do. You get the rest of the night off from commentary, and I'll give you till Friday, and you can decide whether or not you want a job. And that immediately gets Cole to back down. He's like, okay, like just a little bit of soft power.
He even tries to like to be like, no, it's fine. I'll do my job. I'll stay here at the booth.
like the soft power Triple H exudes there. It feels like a cool like juxtaposition to McMahon, and then Triple H pulls out, oh no. You're not on commentary for the rest of the night, and I'm putting you in a match. Again, in what feels like a personal move, but like the way they've had Triple H played like up till now, on it, like again, you think about it and you're like, oh, this is him just like throwing in a bit of extra entertainment so he can turn to the crowd and go, are you not entertained? Like,
yeah,
again, good business sense for running an entertainment business,
and also knocking down an ego.
Yeah,
that could be problematic if left unchecked.
I was surprisingly into Triple H, which, God, for as much as like I find D-Generation X obnoxious a lot of the time, like now I'm like super into him being here. Yeah, cool. Okay, I like this angle.
Yeah, and so he sends Cole off, and we'll go ahead and talk about this match because it's short anyway.
It's 2 seconds long.
Yeah, no, but they do the whole. He first off, he comes out to Triple H's music, and he comes out to Triple H's entrance gear because Cole's first attempt to avoid a match is to be like, oh, I'm not prepared to wrestle. I don't have my gear. I sent it to the WWE Hall of Fame. I'm retired. I can't wrestle. And Triple H is like, oh, don't worry. I brought gear for you. You can go to the locker room and go pick it up.
Oh my God.
It's literally Triple H's wrestling gear, and Michael Cole has to like try to do the Triple H entrance where he like drinks the water and he does the spit take, but he obviously looks like a dork.
Yeah,
doing it.
Hey, he tries, all right.
He tries, and so he wrestles, and they get Zack Ryder in there, who's like the popular mid card wrestler because of his internet show.
Yeah,
he's kind of there to get him on the show and get the he's there for the easy one.
Yeah, he's a meme lord, and they bring him in for the meme match. And immediately downs Cole in like one move and pins him, and Cole's just like wrecked. It was like in the moment, like in a vacuum, that would feel like dumb and weird and pointless, but they write it well enough that it all kind of like blends together.
It's kind of fun, Still.
And then we also have like we said, he sets up for the Mysterio Cena match, which like because of everything that's happened up till now, we immediately understand the stakes of.
Yeah.
And just that little moment they gave him back again. The subtlety, they're not overselling anything. Just that little moment they gave the two of them backstage together. You're like, oh my god, that's wild. It feels really affecting. To immediately know, like, okay, this is like, there's like emotional stakes in this. There's not a whole lot of like political stakes, like, as far as Triple H makes it sound like Cena's just flatly reinstated. But like, there's some emotional stakes to this because a really likable wrestler finally got his due, and now he has to go up against like their ordained superstar.
Yep. And then I guess the last thing from the Triple H thing is the R-Truth bit.
Which was also
which was
great.
very funny. Is R-Truth is as I've said, I've said before, it's a little sad that like his time as a serious like actual main event guy was very swift and is quickly on its downturn. But it helps that he's very fun. That when he transitioned this character into being more comedic than his whole like this is a conspiracy against me into being more comedic than it is like a serious heel motivation, it still works because R-Truth is very funny.
Which I just want to quickly say, I appreciate how much like when the performers in this company can take things like that in stride. Like we saw that with R-Truth tonight. We saw that with Michael Cole tonight. Of like they, instead of being all upset that like their characters are being made fools of or something. They really play into it, and it makes for something that's a lot of fun. And I respect people that like don't mind being funny characters on this show, because I imagine there's a temptation to really want to be one of the like super serious, important characters. But like, dang, the people who take it in stride when they're like made clowns, it's really fun, and it makes me enjoy R-Truth so much more as a character than I'm sure I would like in his serious phase.
Yeah, I don't. Like R-Truth is still actively wrestling because he's been able to like be willing to do comedy stuff and kind of be this fun, relatively unimportant character, but still like a bit player, but still like a known bit player because he's willing to have fun with it.
Yeah,
be a comedy character, and that he's been doing that for 10 years. And
and he does it really well, and he pulls it off really well, and the bit doesn't really ever grate on me. It's just kind of like, yeah, this is him kind of going off, and it's really fun.
No, yeah, he's going off on his usual like this is every year this is a conspiracy, and Triple H is the man who's a part of it, and Triple H kind of like messes with him because R-Truth is still in this phase of like talking to invisible children. And this is also a thing I've noticed is watching like the transition of the concept of little Jimmy when he comes from when he was feuding with John Cena, and that was like the hypothetical Cena fan, like all of his fans are little Jimmys, like little children. And he transitions that into being like a literal imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And this is a big point of that, is he's literally like talking to air and pretending that he's talking to people. And Triple H mocks him about it. And then R-Truth is like, what are you talking about? There's no people there.
And Triple H just goes, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that makes someone look really crazy if they did that, right?
And then R-Truth would turn to the side and be like, yeah, it would be really crazy, wouldn't it?
Like, that bit was so good.
Yeah.
Everything about that whole state of the WWE address freaking ruled.
Yeah, and then it ends with Triple H announcing the return of someone who's back from injury, John Morrison, who has been a regular on this show from his Lucha Underground days as Johnny Mundo.
And he comes in and just completely clowns on R-Truth, which was great to see. Like not even because I don't like R-Truth, he's fun and I enjoy him. But it's always good to see Johnny Mundo in the ring, man.
Oh no, John Morrison is a delight. This freaking parkour expert.
Yeah, no.
Being like, what if I made that as a wrestler?
Yeah, he was so good. Amazing stuff there. Yeah. And what else?
That was it for the state of the WWE. If you want to go to the main event now.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So then we do go to Cena versus Mysterio as the main event of the night.
Yeah, and that was a really good match.
It was a phenomenal match. I mean, because both Cena and Mysterio are both really talented, and the fun of bringing Mysterio into any match is he's got such a distinctive like fighting style that it helps kind of both him and his opponent stand out, because like his opponent just looks better for being in the ring with him and being able to square up with him and for looking different than him.
Oh yeah, John Cena looked amazing tonight.
Yeah.
He got to kind of show off as kind of like as a powerhouse in a way that he doesn't always get to show off, because WWE likes to paint him as the ultimate good guy and thus an underdog. That doesn't always work for John Cena, because like, look at him.
Yeah.
But because he's facing another good guy in Rey Mysterio and someone who's much smaller than him, he kind of just gets to throw some Mysterio around.
Yeah, but the thing that I really appreciate here is they carry over a little bit of his baggage from the Punk feud, because they set this up brilliantly from the little moment they share together in the locker room, or backstage during Mysterio's post victory promo, and the fact that it's like a face versus face match, and that like there is no like animosity between these two. These are two guys who are decently friendly, who are fighting because the boss told them to fight,
and they both want to be champions.
They both want to be champion.
Nothing personal, no disrespect.
Yeah, it's a career move for Cena because he needs to get back on top after his like disgracing. And it's for Mysterio. It's a point of dignity of like, I finally earned my way here. I want to keep that. And throughout the match, like there's this kind of sense about it where like, Mysterio's obviously driven, he's going hard and he's fighting. And Cena's going hard too. Like they're both going at it. But it has this air of like, from Cena, it has this air of like obligation to it, of he takes no joy in doing this to Rey Mysterio. He has to put him away, and he knows that like that it's the best for him if he puts up as good a match as possible and wins, which he does. After a long, arduous battle of amazing back and forth between the two of them, where they both pinfall each other a whole lot, and at one point Cena looks like he's close to tapping out. After Rey puts him in a really good that's the STF, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Rey puts him in a really good STF. And Cena looks like he's getting the upper hand, and then Mysterio looks like he's getting the upper hand, and it's just great back and forth. And Cena eventually does like drop him with an attitude adjustment to win the day. But even after that, there's no like abject joy on Cena's face. He doesn't look proud of what he's done, and he takes the belt and he celebrates a tiny bit with a lot of humility, and then goes over to pump up Mysterio, make sure he's okay, and then hold his hand up too, like my worthy opponent who deserves this just as much as I do. And it was kind of cool after the whole thing about half the crowd doesn't like Cena because they interpret him as like the super arrogant ass, and sometimes rightfully so. It was cool to see here, even in victory, John Cena ate a huge piece of humble pie.
And I want to say is that it is sometimes hard to fully get into matches because I already know the outcome, and I was like, as always, like this happens every episode because it's as a result of I'm the one who plans these, and even then, even if I've never seen this episode, I knew what was going to happen. I knew that Rey was going to win. He was going to be champion for about an hour, and then Cena was going to beat him.
Yeah.
And despite that, I think both of the championship matches got me hooked into it and on the drama, despite the fact that, again, I knew what was going to happen. There was nothing. It was a sad inevitability.
Yeah.
For Rey Mysterio, the second shortest reigning champion of all time, one of only two men to have been WWE champion for less than a day, the other being Andre the Giant when he gave the belt up to try to give it to DiBiase, who we've seen on this show. But yeah, and as I mentioned when we were watching, this is kind of held up as one of like one of the biggest like in character dick moves that Cena's ever done, which was like wrestle Rey Mysterio for the title the night he won it.
Yeah.
But to be fair to that is that I think that some of that is that kind of a not quite remembering how it plays out that way and just remembering that Cena beat Rey Mysterio the same night.
Yeah.
Because Cena does not I assumed that Cena was going to be the one who like initiates this issue, and he doesn't. That would be Triple H does that.
Yeah. So
I guess I'll let Cena off the hook for that one. I got plenty of other kayfabe examples if I want to.
Yeah, seriously.
I'll let it go. But yeah, so Cena's champion, except.
Yeah, no. I mean, this is the cool part, and so much kudos to Cena here for his really good acting. Like, I felt like his kind of little bit of shame here, because he kind of standing in the ring and he's still standing there, and this music's going off, and he's just kind of like, what's going on?
We got Cult of Personality by Living Color.
Yup. And then, sure enough, out pops CM Punk.
He is back, and
carrying the belt.
It's a very cool moment. Is they both got their belts, and they are clearly challenging each other. Though this is a bit of a point of contention for a lot of people. It's kind of like the moment where this story stops like hitting on all cylinders, in that most people look at CM Punk coming back after only 2 weeks as being a mistake. That they should have stretched that out a lot more. They could have done a lot more with that storyline, and they just didn't.
Yeah, I could see that. It'd be nice. It'd be cool to give like Punk more vacation pay and shit, well earned, and then have him come back for a big like final like twist showdown.
Yeah, I might talk more about like when I think he should have come back next time, because that was as we're wrapping up this little arc in our podcast. But people frequently talk about how like it would have been like insane and really cool if like, because Punk still had relationships with companies like Ring of Honor, where he used to work with before, or New Japan Pro Wrestling, companies that he name dropped in the pipe bomb. Yeah. If he had actually like went to those shows with the WWE Championship in tow, would have been absolutely insane. And for a lot of people, that's a bit of a missed opportunity. That like comes back after only 2 weeks, and it's technically 8 days, technically, if we want to do this by day.
Yeah.
And all that really happens is he like shows up unannounced to like a Comic-Con with the belt. It's kind of like the only major thing he does while as champion, while technically not with the company.
Yeah.
Because obviously, out of story, he signed a contract the day of Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
So he's always been under contract with WWE as champion, but storyline wise, he wasn't, and they did not really do anything with that.
Yeah, and I can see that. And I can definitely see that, long term being a bother. Because this is clearly, for as much as I've been praising the writing, this is them, getting a little too excited, playing their hand a little too early, and it's definitely gonna like create some like, a little too much denouement down the line. But that being said, I will give the ending of the episode this. It's kind of like, if we're hitting a downward slope from here, kind of one last final stroke of abject brilliance in what they did. Of, you kind of sit there and you're like, damn, it's heartbreaking to see Mysterio like lose this so quickly.
Yeah.
And Cena's not proud of it, but Cena did what Cena had to do, and then Punk comes out, and the final image of the match is them staring each other down, both holding their belts up. Punk, with that shit-eating grin like always. And, the entire time, Cena just looks defeated as fuck. Like first of all, he did something that like he, doesn't take any joy in. And then, oh my God, Punk comes back, and it kind of gives you this immediate realization of course, it couldn't have been anyone but Cena to keep that belt. Because ultimately, this is a story between them, the kind of dark reflections of each other.
Mhm.
And so in the kind of final stroke, they give this great clarity to, it's like if it were Mysterio facing down Punk, it wouldn't have as much of an effect. But
No, it would
that
not. It wouldn't hit the
final,
same as
yeah,
Cena
that
and Punk one
hitting
more
that
time.
final image of them like staring each other down, and Punk, it almost felt as though Punk was like waiting for this moment
Mhm.
to to like it almost feels like part of his like grandmaster plan, just to like show everybody up in his like egomaniacal quest for whatever. It's this really affecting image visually and emotionally, because Cena plays it so well. And I will give the early reinstatement of Punk that in that moment it felt really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Which, yeah, short term versus long term, but
Yep, absolutely.
Mm.
So that kind of covers a lot of that. Covers most of the big stuff. That covers the big stuff on this episode. From there, I guess we can just kind of go down through the matches. There wasn't really anything else to go at. For
yeah,
that
no, not any
plot.
other big things. It's just all the rest of the matches, and a couple promos to probably briefly touch on here and there. But like,
Yeah.
all the rest of the matches again were good. So we start off with Mysterio versus
The
Miz.
Miz.
Mysterio wins. And then after that, did we go into Divas after that?
That was Ziggler and Bourne is next.
Ziggler and Bourne is next. We talked about that. That was fine.
Ziggler won. He's the U.S. champion still.
Ziggler won. Probably the biggest highlight of that was me being like, "Damn, I don't know who to root for here," because Bourne is boring, and Ziggler just fucking sucks.
I talked about that when we were watching. I'd never like Evan Bourne's always been athletically gifted, but I did not find him compelling to watch as a character until he became a stoner hippie after he left WWE.
Yeah. And now, but I mean, at the very least, I'll give that the Ziggler win is probably the outcome I enjoy more, because Bourne is boring, and also because that means more shenanigans with Vicky.
Yeah, making the U.S. champion look strong. I can't really complain about that.
Yeah, Miz over celebrates it by a fucking mile, or Ziggler.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, dude goes absolutely wild. And he goes, "Follow that!" And like, as much as I have my own issues with his like show stealing the show kind of a character, but it is just kind of funny that he says this for a match that lasts like 3 minutes.
Yeah,
already after we had Rey Mysterio versus the Miz.
I'll give the writers benefit of the doubt that like it was intentional, that he was like overselling it, because he's just an asshole. Yeah, no, so we had that, and that happened, and then
oh my god, the Divas thing backstage.
Then was that? Yeah, it was, because then
it happened before the match.
Here?
I agree. Oh my god, I hate it.
So it was the Bella Twins, and was it Kelly
Eve
or was
Torres.
it Eve? It was Eve.
Torres.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're just like jaw-jacking backstage. Eve's complaining about the twin magic nonsense that the Bellas do.
It's like, I appreciate that they actually called that out.
Yeah, just as a reminder, if you've not watched us talk about this era before, is the whole thing is that Nikki and Brie are twins, and so sometimes they will just switch places in the middle of the match to help them win matches.
Yeah.
And so Eve's like, that's bullshit. We all see you do it all the time. And they're like, what? No, we don't do that all the time. And then the freaking Keystone Light guy shows up. I've never explained him before because I kind of didn't think I'd have to. He appeared on the Capital Punishment pay-per-view. He is legitimately like the like if you were watching Keystone Light ads in 2011, God help you. But if you were, this is the spokesman, mascot kind of a guy.
Yeah.
And WWE is currently sponsored by Keystone Light, and so he has this is his second appearance that I know of in a segment with Divas. He just shows up. Why was he there? I don't know, but he's just there, and he tries to settle the dispute by drawing with Sharpie on one of the Bella's arms, and then they do a whole gag that like they cut away, and 5 seconds later it's a whole tattoo. It's like a whole tattoo sleeve.
Yeah, which like I don't understand because like are they implying those markers are like tattoo markers? Is that permanent? Or because I thought like if they're markers like okay the Bellas are gonna go out there and like they can't wash it off in between but like well but what?
No, it's so dumb and it didn't mean anything because the Bellas weren't wrestling this week.
Yeah, it made no sense, and like literally, like in the like world, it made no sense. It's one of those like times WWE just like abandons all sense of reality and does something like super cartoonish just because.
It's this dumb non sequitur that is not important ever again.
Also, all three of those women looked way too attracted to that dude for like.
Oh yeah, Jesus! They all seem real charmed by this dude. It looks like if you took the actor for My Name Is Earl and you shrunk him and you shrink wrapped him a little bit. Kind of,
and he was like clearly
that.
a little skeezy too. Like,
yeah,
why are they into this?
Yeah, it was weird.
It was bizarre. I don't know. Maybe that's an appealing to the demographics thing. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not part of the demographic that likes Keystone Light, so I guess it's not for me.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a thing that happens, and it was goofy and cartoony, but we got a good laugh out of it. Just the randomness of it all. It was so fucking like it was out of left field, and I can appreciate it for that at least.
Absolutely, but then it does lead into a Divas match, but again, not with the Bellas. It's with Kelly, and Eve wrestling Melina and Maurice, who I don't believe we've seen Maurice before, but her thing is she's French and hot and bitchy. Got him.
Damn, what a step up. Hey, that is a 3-dimensional character. There are exactly 3 dimensions to her.
Melina is the same hot and bitchy stereotype.
Austin and I are over here like we want 3-dimensional divas and the monkey paw curls down.
Like, oh yeah, there's 3 dimensions. French, hot, bitchy. It's like,
yep.
Yeah, as we said, this was actually kind of above average in terms of like being interesting to watch, especially because like I think it's because Eve, who is pretty athletic herself, is like the anchor of this match.
Yeah. She really brings the whole thing up a notch. Like, without her, it probably would have been really bad. But like, her segments were great.
Yeah, and so, but other than that, it's just like it's kind of what you expect. It's not.
She does do a fun thing where she like twerks over one of her.
That feels very topical to 2011. I tell you.
Yeah. She like twerks over them and then like uses that to transition to a move, and I'm like, you know what? That's neat.
No, that was pretty cool.
That was cute. I will give it that. But other than that, it was a bearable Divas match. Honestly, that's such a step up from most of what we've seen. I'll give it to them.
I'll take it. We're so close to being done with that.
Yeah, I ain't looking a gift horse in the mouth here. Let's just take it, not think about it, move on.
Move on. Okay. So then Zack Ryder beat Michael Cole. We talked about it. Then Alberto Del Rio had a rematch with a Kofi Kingston.
And this was another like nail biter too, because I love me some Kofi, and Del Rio is such a fucking schmuck. Such a cocky little schmuck too. Like his constant like L's just do not seem to be phasing him. He's just so happy to be here and so happy to have that Money in the Bank thing.
Like doesn't matter. Mr. Money in the Bank, future champion, don't matter.
Yeah. And clearly he's been really affected by like the fact that he's been losing a lot so far, because he goes ham from the get-go. Michael Cole like says it in this episode. Michael Cole's been giving, for the most part, way too much credit to the heels, but like he was kind of dead on here when he said like Del Rio was like really determined for this one, especially as a rematch against Kofi.
Yeah, because his Kofi will beat him last week as part of the championship tournament that I mentioned in the first half, and then like this time Del Rio does get the win back, and it's pretty solid affair overall.
It was. I mean, it sucks because I always want to see Kofi win, but I was kind of thinking like it's about time they give El Rio a dub. Like they're just making him look like a fucking idiot, and especially for like rematching Kofi, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to rematch Kofi and still lose.
Yeah, it would not make sense for him to go 0-2 on Kofi. And I talked about this when we were watching. Is like a problem with Money in the Bank is that WWE gets it in their heads that like either because they're going to win the championship, it doesn't matter if they win if they win matches before they win the title, or as it helps build an element of surprise if they don't get too hot of a winning streak or whatever. But like Money in the Banks have a historical problem of kind of being mediocre at best, if not just outright losing records all the time while they have the briefcase. And so that's why I thought, maybe Kofi will go to win again. Just because, that's the way that philosophy works. And I don't agree with it at all, because I think that it just makes the inevitable championship win look weaker, because this is a guy who's just been losing left, right, and center beforehand. Yeah, no. Like when the Money in the Bank is already designed that you're going to win in a really underhanded and cheap fashion, don't make it worse by then also just making them losers before they do it.
Especially because like we have now seen Del Rio have 2 failed attempts at a cash-in.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon, but then it's also like, well, if you're going to have him keep failing to do it, at least have him win his matches. Yeah,
exactly. Which like it's like Del Rio at this point is very much being played as another comedy fighter. So having him as like the Money in the Bank holder is kind of this tricky balancing act of like keeping that up while still like, maintaining a character that could, underhandedly get the title by doing this, or, at least has the potential to. But I think what's interesting for me, like, this is one of those things that's a great case study. And like, again, I've been really praising the writing on this one, but like, damn, there are some times where like, the WWE could do some really interesting things with how they decide to like, how much they decide to kind of like give narrative credence to somebody's like winning record. That could add a whole lot of extra dimensions to like what they how they set up fights and like and the stakes behind them. Like here, if he had lost to Kofi again, that could have it going back, it had the storyline, not played out already in a different way. Like that could have led to a cool thing maybe where like it now creates this super beef between like Kofi and Del Rio, that like, Kofi feels like he's the rightful heir to the Money in the Bank or whatever. So and it could be a great launching pad for a great Kofi story.
It could have led to a match where Kofi fights Del Rio for the briefcase.
Yeah.
Having to defend the briefcase is not an uncommon story beat.
And during the Summer of Punk, I can understand them not going more intricate, but it is one of those things I look at and I think like, damn, I really wish sometimes they would go like really intricate with like the ways they decide to play up like the fighting company aspect of this, because like, I'll ask Austin sometimes like how to make sense of like the tournament and championship structure in a WWE season, and there kind of isn't a way to do it. It's just like, they punch each other, and sometimes it's for titles, sometimes it's just for entertainment value, whatever. I sometimes really, really wish that they would take some time to really lean to focusing on everybody's like winning streak performance and like the stakes that could come from that, and like the ramifications of if somebody keeps losing despite being in a apparent position of like power and privilege, or vice versa. It's not something that like we can super harp on because it's so hypothetical, but it's just one of those things I think about of like, man, I'd really love to see them play up this aspect more, because they could do a lot of interesting stuff with it. And again, forgivable that they weren't like going in on that during Summer of Punk, but like at some point, I wish I could see more of that.
Yeah, I think that WWE tries to, I think that their personal writing philosophy is to make it more about being a drama piece, in a sense of like everything has to be like a personal stake to it of some sort. Like it can't, like there's not enough, like there's not really any explicit like this person is a fight, like the fact that they are all in stories supposed to be like professional fighters in a professional fighting league isn't something that WWE values as a story tool. Yeah. And that disappoints me, because I think you could use that well.
Well, yeah, we talked about this with Lucha Underground, that it works well like that.
And like, and you don't have to like, and it doesn't have to be a binary situation. You don't have to like sacrifice like your soap opera and your like theatrical drama to also to talk about just to like do stuff that's related to, oh yeah, these guys are like pro fighters. That's they want to win matches because they want to make more money and be champion that makes them more money. Like you don't have, it doesn't have to be a situation where you're just like a super serious, like everyone's in it to win it. Like some kind of like UFC-esque kind of narrative structure where it's about, where like there is personal grudges, but at the end of the day, it's about like winning fights to make money. And then having this like, as opposed to having this like, this like drama, this like, not as like drama piece where everything is a personal grudge. Like you don't have to, it doesn't have to be either or. You can do both.
Oh, I agree, and I think again, Summer of Punk is exemplary of that. Because they obviously not to the same extent, but they do like the business aspect of the company is what drives it, and it runs in tandem with like that personal drama sort of thing. And on top of that, like my thinking about that in the back of my head added a little more to the Kofi Del Rio fight for me. Because like, you know, Del Rio's a good enough fighter and Kofi's a really good fighter. I will never get enough of Kofi. But kind of in the back of my mind going like, dang, what does that say about Del Rio if he loses again? But also like, you know, Kofi's going hard here, and he could lose, he could win again. And what'll that like, you know, what'll that entail for him? Or, you know, what does it say about Kofi if he lets like Del Rio clown on him, despite Del Rio just being an utter buffoon recently? Like it added this extra, just thinking about that, like on my own, add an extra dimension to it that I think sometimes could serve to give more tangible stakes to the fights that even technically are like kind of fluff and filler that we complain about all the time.
Yeah, like you could have added more to, like Ziggler and Bourne was probably too short to be like worth putting more into, but you still could have. Like you could have explicitly put some stakes to it. Like it is an overused trope in wrestling anyway, that to have a non-champion beat a champion and that be justification to have a championship match. But you still could have made that explicit of like, you know, Evan Bourne's getting a shot against a champion, the US champion. Like, what if he wins? If he wins, what if he wins? He should get a chance to win the championship.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just some food for thought, I guess. And I hope I can see that angle at some point in the future, because I don't know. It's just something fun to think about of like what could be the still as yet to be unexplored potential in this, you know, decades old company.
Yeah, and I guess as we're kind of winding down here, because I don't. Oh, you know, there is the Miz.
Oh, there's the Miz promo. I mean, we just get Miz like being interviewed about like his loss against Mysterio, and he's just mad. And honestly, like there wasn't a whole lot to say other than like you know what, I felt legitimately a little intimidated by Miz there.
I think the Miz is a really good at playing angry.
Yeah.
Like, and like when he's like going hard at it, you can kind of feel that in a way that even if he doesn't necessarily always come off as the most like threatening individual.
When he's given a chance to kind of like just monologue for a second and get really mad, I was like, dang, I mean, it kind of kept in the back of my mind of like, oh, he could be a lingering threat if he's like this worked up about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no. So I appreciate it for that. Again, this, like I said, this episode, consistently entertaining across the board, and really did a good job at not overstating anything while still giving us a whole lot of little things to think about, that we can kind of like keep in the back of our minds as how are these small things here and there going to pay off, or how are things that have, you know, been set up till now paying off, and, you know, how do we feel about them? Because I felt like emotionally affecting things in this episode, and I felt tantalized as to like still some of what's being set up. There's the subtlety here was great. The writing was really like strong, meticulous, competent. The performances were all really good, and the fights were all entertaining. Even the worst ones weren't that bad.
Yeah, I can't say I can ask for a whole lot more in what is a weekly episode of Raw. I think
Yeah.
it was a pretty solid outing overall, and
Probably on average, if we're looking at like all Raw episodes, all weekly episodes on, as an aggregate, probably a little above average for its like consistent goodness.
yeah, I would absolutely say that.
Yeah, no, really, really enjoyable. I once
Yeah,
again want to commend the writers of the era for the intelligence they brought to the table and what they did. Good job,
yeah,
guys.
2011 and kind of the PG era as a whole is kind of not always seen as a great time in WWE, and definitely the before and after this, I get it, but I feel it just kind of feels like right now in summer of 2011, they're kind of hitting on
and
cylinders they
Summer of
need to
Punk,
hit.
rightfully so, because of that, has gone down in history as a really exceptional point in time. So, like, at least it's gotten its due for the most part.
Yeah,
absolutely, as far as I can tell, at least.
Definitely, this era of time is well looked back on.
Yeah, and for good reason. And it's been really cool to explore. And I can't believe we only have one more episode left of it.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. WWE sometimes, like, their summer eras is just, they just hit different. I don't know why that is. I don't know why that happens, but it just kind of does sometimes. There's a few different years I could give you as an example of that.
Yeah, no. Maybe like, that's all their writers are like, I don't know, mages that derive their strength from the power of the sun or something. I don't know, dude.
I don't know. Well, next time we're gonna, I guess, prove the opposite effect of proof this isn't an effect, because we return to the new generation. Oh, David. I guess it's finally time to talk about why I picked this time.
Oh, we're finally
sadly
here.
Sadly, you already know, but I'm gonna save it for next time. We're gonna have stuff to talk about. I'll say that. I'm gonna have thoughts that I have been saving for months.
Yeah.
And I guess we're probably gonna have a good match too. 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bret Hart.
That'll be nice.
That'll be good. But I have thoughts, and I'm very ready to share them. But that's for next time.
I just know something bad is gonna go down, and I'm gonna be strung along for it, and I'll have some sort of epiphany of like, Jesus Christ, why?
Yep.
Epiphany of awfulness. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yep. But first, David, hit the plugs.
Yes, sir. Alrighty. My friends, my dear friends, my fellow wrestleheads, if you will, noobs and knockouts alike, thank you so much for joining us for another fantastic episode of the Noobs and Knockouts Podcast. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. We are so happy to have you, or listener rather. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. We are delighted to have you join us. If you would like to continue to join us and you're not entirely sure of how to do so, I'm going to tell you right now. First of all, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. We are the Noobs and Knockouts Podcast. Hit that bell, hit subscribe, get notified, leave comments and likes and whatever have you. Add us to your playlist. However you want to do it, we're here for it. You can also find us on Spotify, on Apple, and on Google. 3 of the best places to get your podcasts. Leave us ratings and all that good stuff. Follow us and tell us what you think of the episodes. We love that sweet engagement. It boosts our metrics a little bit. It's just cool to like get feedback on the stuff we do, because this is a whole big investment for us. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Noobs and Knox Pod. That's Noobs, the letter N, Knox Pod. We post about our episodes every week whenever they go up. Austin does weekly live tweeting of wrestling shows. At time of recording, he's facing down the same crucible that we mentioned in the last episode due to these 2 episodes being recorded in the same weekend. So look forward to the WrestleMania lead up from him. And we like to throw in some like memes every now and again and engage with the broader wrestling fandom community. How you do. You can email us at at Noobs and Knockouts Podcast at gmail.com. That's the word "and" this time. Just say hi, tell us what you think of the show. Let us know that you think our voices are indeed incredibly sexy. Give recommendations, suggestions, whatever. We just love hearing from people. And finally, you can subscribe to our Patreon. $1 a month gets you early access to videos and a shout out at the end of each episode.
Yep, and the live tweet schedule for this week, based on when this airs. This is going to be This episode drops. This today is will be the second night of WrestleMania. Will I be live tweeting that? Depends on when our recording schedule is for next week. So can't confirm that yet. What I can confirm, the Raw after WrestleMania. I don't usually watch Raw because it's 3 hours and it's not usually good enough to justify me watching 3 hours. But the Raw after Mania, it's always a super exciting time. You never know what they're going to do. There's a long history of the rest of the Raw after WrestleMania being a super exciting affair, especially because there might be live fans there. We'll see. Ooh. They're bringing live crowds back for WrestleMania, whether you think that's a good idea or not. But will they extend that to Raw? Can't say. And then, of course, as always, live tweeting Wednesday nights, AEW Dynamite, 8 o'clock. It's the one wrestling show I follow on a consistent weekly live basis, and so I will continue to live tweet that.
Yes, outstanding. Check all that out, and we will see you guys next time.
Yeah, see ya. Bye bye.
Hasta luego.